eavesdropping mechanisms on Barack Obama. Keith, what is your theory about that?
Well, I've always believed that the last hands-on president was George H.W. Bush. I mean, as far as someone who actually had a decision-making role in foreign policy and what have you. And since then, they've come up with a new strategy, and that is to get a president in that is more relatable to the people. And they keep getting dumber and more basic as time goes on. We got Clinton, then we got George W. Bush, the almost idiot. Then we got Barack Obama. Maybe we can appeal to the people that because he's a black president. He's not part of the mainstream. And I wouldn't be surprised if they find, maybe not this presidency or the upcoming elections in 2012, but maybe the next one, where they pick someone like a plumber or an electrician, someone who's impressionable, someone who's down home and rootsy. But the thing is, you have to understand that behind that is you're going to find this Jewish power. And it'll probably be somebody who has strong Christian Zionist beliefs, and they want to reduce the size of the government, and that's what they're trying to do. That's what I see that's happening.
Keith, that's very interesting because as you were relaying that theme and that theory, I remember reading a novel written years ago about some small town, some small-time political figure who is suddenly catapulted into national prominence. And all of a sudden, he's the subject of media attention, and he's a very sincere guy who comes from the grassroots and who truly believes that, hey, my God, here in my hands, I have the opportunity to remake America. And then he discovers that, in fact, a super secret group of wealthy and powerful conspirators behind the scenes are in fact the ones who have orchestrated his...
Exactly. And I want to put this out to the audience. If you have not seen this movie, rent it. It's one of the best movies to ever come out of Hollywood. It's called A Face in the Crowd, starring Andy Griffith, and he plays this Arkansas hobo who becomes an overnight sensation. I mean, they find the local radio producers find him in a drunk tank, but he has this wit. He has this folksy attitude. He can play guitar, and he's very articulate. And they rise this guy to prominence, and he actually becomes instrumental in getting a senator elected, Fuller, the guy named Fuller. And you look at this story, and you tell me how the parallels between Glenn Beck and this guy called, I think his name is Dusty Rhodes, or God, what was his name? But it's a fantastic movie. And it's just unbelievable. He's just this drunk who is brought to fame and power because he can relate to the people, and he has them fooled. And at the very end of the movie, I shouldn't give it away, but I think I should. Is he just looks out to the crowd and he goes, "Look at these stupid idiots! How they'll believe anything that I tell them." And you really should see that, and you should look at the career of Glenn Beck. Where did he come from? He came from radio, didn't he? He was a drunk. He was just a buffoon, and now all of a sudden he's become one of the most, most trusted and respected political commentators in America.
Yeah.
I mean,
You've got to see that movie if you guys haven't seen it.
Now I'm going to make a point of getting that movie.
Get that movie. It's with Andy Griffith, and it's one of the best movies ever made, and it really is a commentary on what's going on right now, especially. And think of Glenn Beck when you watch this movie.
Mike, you did say that you had someplace you had to be. Are we cutting it kind of close?
No, I can stick around for another 10 minutes.
Okay,
or so.
Okay, that'd be fine, because I definitely want to jump into Keith's article here. The Arabs run Hollywood, and I can prove it. Now, for those of you out there who don't understand where Keith is coming from with this, the Arabs run Hollywood. That first part of that of the title there, that is right out of the mouth of the grand Poobah himself, Alex Jones. He made that comment on one of his programs where he said the Arabs run Hollywood, and he has authored a whole host of similarly inane statements that basically are meant to take the reticles of your rifle off of the target and move them just a little bit over this way or a little bit over that way, so that you don't you may wound the animal, but you're not going to kill it. And Keith has done a marvelous job here of pointing out the inanity of this statement, that anybody who entertains just this one notion that the Arabs run Hollywood, such as Alex Jones, or any of his wannabe sister acts that are up and coming, he did a marvelous job here, marvelous job in pointing out the inanity of it. Keith, let's talk about this for a second.
Okay.
What was other than the fact that let's face it, we have to find things to laugh at these days, and certainly I saw a certain amount of, therapeutic exercise here in you writing this. What's the point you're trying to make?
Well, I'm trying to make the point that the Arabs do run Hollywood, basically, just like these. I started it off being sarcastic, sardonic, but I just wanted to, even though I really couldn't get into the minds of the audience, I really wanted people to really think about their attitude on that kind of thinking. I was reading, they'll give blogs to anybody. I mean, bored housewives especially, right? And you see these things where they talk about how that Hollywood is coddling and being sympathetic to the Muslims.
Right.
And, we can't go there because the Muslims will get mad. And they get angry about that. Like in the movie 2012, which was directed and written by Roland Emmerich, right? He also did The Patriot and Independence Day.
Right.
And, quite a few blockbusters. But in that movie, the world's destroyed, right? And you can see St. Peter's, the Sistine Chapel with Michelangelo's famous painting on the ceiling, it's destroyed, and a Buddhist temple falls, and the White House is destroyed, and Christ the Redeemer in Rio topples, and, but there were so many people out there were angry. They were absolutely angry and set aside that the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem was not destroyed. And they said, well, why were all these other holy places destroyed and not, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem? I mean, that's got to be proof positive right there that the Muslims control Hollywood. And I read this blog that this woman was writing. I go, oh man, this woman, I don't know if I can say it. She needs to get something, but I can't say it. Maybe she's gone through a couple husbands. She's probably got cats all over the house, but And she was also upset that they didn't make a sand pit out of Mecca. And I'm thinking to myself, so in other words, in your world, in your Christian Zionist world, we must destroy, in order for you to be happy in this movie, we need to destroy the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, right? And actually, Roland Emmerich actually stated in an interview, as did Ron Howard also changed the villain in the book Angels and Demons, I think it was called.
Yeah, he was a Syrian.
Yeah. Right. He also did the Da Vinci Code, right? Ron Howard. He's Jewish, believe it or not. You knew that, didn't you?
No.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Anyway, so he changed the name or actually changed the character from a Muslim villain to a Danish villain. And both of these directors said that they were afraid, they did in interviews, separate interviews, that a fatwa would be put on their heads because of the movies, right? Now, as far as I'm concerned, maybe I'm reaching here, but as far as I'm concerned, them coming out and making that kind of statement almost sounds like they want you to think that the Muslims have power. You see what I'm saying? They
absolutely.
Need to put that, they need to throw that out so that Christian Zionists and these people who sit in fear that the Muslims are going to come over and take their property, they need to throw that out there so that there's this is at least smidgen of a doubt that the Muslims have some hand in filmmaking. But this is what I want to point out about the film 2012. In one of the very first scenes, in about 10 minutes, I watch a lot of movies because I've seen it in a whole different perspective now that I've been awake to what's going on. But one of the very first people that you see is a Arab sheik who is buying his way onto an ark which has been built, right. You don't see any Jews throughout the whole movie who are rich enough to buy their way onto the Ark. There are Russians, there are Saudi Arabians, there are all sorts of people, but no Jews are rich enough to get on the Ark. Do you see the psychological game being played here?
Sure.
That is very, very, very interesting.
Right, so they throw out this idea that we don't want a fatwa on our head, so we had to change some things. And I've seen patriots pick up on it. Unfortunately, one of my favorite networks, RBN, there's a couple guys on there who actually picked up on this thing and said, we're coddling the Muslims too much. Greg Everson, I'll throw his name out there. He's John Moore. These people actually believe that to be politically correct and not to upset the Muslims who have all this money power, that we are actually just complying with their wishes. And it's putting that false idea. Even patriots are picking up on it. They're actually. It just blows my mind that they can't see. It just takes a little, just a little bit of logic and reason and common sense to see the game that's being played on these people.
That's interesting because this whole anti-Muslim fear that is gripping America. I'm sorry to say. It's entirely a Jewish creation.
Absolutely.
Whole concept, and I was reworking my book, The New Babylon, today, and in that book I stated flatly, and I remember when I wrote it originally, I said the whole concept of anti-Americanism, which is all part of this whole Muslim fear mongering, not by Muslims but about Muslims, it's also a Jewish invention. Mm-hmm. American people are not hated anywhere in the world, but the corrupt American government, which is known by the people worldwide to be controlled by the Jews, or at least substantially dominated by the Jews, that is hated around the world. I was telling somebody the other day, I spoke at a university in Malaysia some years ago, along with William Rodriguez, by the way, the 9/11 survivor, who, by the way, is a convert to Islam.
Yes, right.
But William and I were waiting out on the front, literally on the front steps of the lecture hall, and a big car pulls up, and this very elegant woman steps out of the car. She happens to be the chancellor of the university. Now, bear in mind, this is in a Muslim country. Here is a woman who is the chancellor of a university. Mm-hmm. Okay? She steps out of her car. She comes up to both of us, shakes our hands, and then hugs us and says, "Gentlemen," she said, "I am glad to have Americans here as our guests." Mm-hmm. She says, "I spent many years in the United States. I love the United States. I love the American people," she said, "but I hate your government and what it has done to our world today." And she said, "You and I know why it's happening, and it's so good to know that there are Americans who are standing up to it."
Mm-hmm. I just want to put just a little footnote on that. There was, like I said, I'm a big movie buff, and I watch a lot of documentaries. There was a documentary called Guerrilla Girl, which follows this woman as she joins the FARC in Colombia, right? Mm-hmm. A communist rebel group in the jungles of Colombia, right? And they actually showed her in a training setting, and the man who was up there training them said, "Listen, our problems stem from the imperialistic American government." He says, "I want to make clear that it's not the American people who are the problem. They're the victims of their imperialistic American government." And see, our government wants us to think that all these people around the world hate us. They don't hate us. They think of us as victims. They really do. They think we're living under a tyrannical, they believe our ignorance and our stupidity and all the things that are happening. I mean, they see us as obese, ignorant fools. They see us as victims.
Yeah, and it's and that's it. And
it's not us. It's the government. All these, all these groups, communists, whether we're talking about Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan, these people are not our enemies.
No, absolutely not. And
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And that's the point that we've got to get across, is that it's all a big scam, it's all a big game. It's being done to, it's like War of the Worlds, the radio show that was broadcast back in the 30s, and they got everybody all worked up. You had